Nearly half a century ago, there was a movie about an awkward dinner party which dealt with issues around interracial marriage and racism. It was called Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? You remember it. Tracy and Hepburn and Sidney Poitier gave unforgettable performances. Well, fast forward nearly half a century to today, and a Pulitzer Prize-winning play called Disgraced. It's on stage now in Toronto. Disgraced is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner on steroids. It is an intense, funny, horrifying and poignant look at racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. Folks, it's all in there. And here are the two stars of Disgraced, Raoul Beneja and Birgitta Solem, and we're delighted to welcome you here to our studio at Yonge and Eglinton.
Thank you very much.
So nice to meet you guys. I saw the play. Boy, oh boy. Well, we're going to get into it. How did you Raoul, you found out about this play, first of all, in New York, right?
Yeah, it was from a blog post, of all things. The playwright had written a blog post in which he described going to see a reading of Hamlet that a friend of his had done at a university outside of New York. And he bemoaned the fact that his friend, who was of a South Asian background and a fine actor, would probably never have the opportunity to play that incredible role on any of the major stages. So I had felt that he wanted to create a role that could really, that could feature, you know, a mid-career actor of South Asian origin, kind of one of a great stage part. So of course, you know, I couldn't help but stop and find out what play is he talking about. Then of course we got a copy of the script, and then we realized, okay, this is much more than like a vehicle for there to be a good part in. This is an incredible play and story, and we flew to New York, saw it at the Lincoln Center in its very early days.
How quickly before you thought, I need to do this, I need to bring this up to Toronto?
That night, really.
That night.
That confirmed it for us. And we met with Ayad after. He was kind enough to meet us after the play.
Writer.
The writer, yeah. And we sat down and said, hey, we want to, this is a perfect play for Toronto. We'd really love to bring it there. And he said, well, you seem like nice people, and you're dedicated enough to fly down and see it and talk to me about it, so I'll help you any way I can. And that was that was 3.5 years ago.
Huh. The play's about two different couples. You two are one of the couples. Mm-hmm. Was it a given that you were both going to be in this play together, playing the couple?
I think what's so interesting is Raoul called me. You were out of town or something, and I read the script on my own, and he just said, read the script and tell me what you think. So the parts were so perfect for both of us, and it was so exciting to first of all, read a script that I couldn't put down. Just read the whole thing in one sitting. And second of all, have two parts that would be such fun for us to play together. So it was pretty much...
And we've been married for a long time, but we haven't done a play together since we first started dating 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and it was we did a fringe...
In 20 years you have not done a play together?
Yeah,
No.
so you can't accuse us of being one of those showbiz couples that's always in each other's things. We're very judicious about it. But I think it's also because we were very young and we did the Fringe Festival tour of Canada, and that we almost broke up. So I think that may be more the reason.
Yeah, so that we needed some time to...
Yeah, we needed 20 years to grow up
recover.
and have kids and be busy actors on our own. But these were just the right parts for us.
Do you think your marriage is going to survive this? Because there's a lot of bad stuff that happens between you two on that stage.
You know, there is, but it's so much fun working together. I love Raoul's work, and I'm sure he feels the same way.
I do.
And so being together, watching each other work, playing together has been such a joy.
It kind of made us realize how crazy it is. We've spent all these years not working together. I kind of feel now, I understand. I know it can be stressful when people have family businesses and a husband and wife work together. And I thought, oh yeah, but I can see the plus side of it. We're just around each other a lot more. Acting is a business where you're so often, you have temporary families on a film set and a movie and a theater company. So it's been nice for us to have that time together. And I'm sure there'll still be a reviewer who doesn't know we're married and say, I don't believe these people are a couple at all. But you know, that's what critics do.
Well, there is that kiss in the very first part of the show, which is, I mean, it's more than just a showbiz kiss. That looks a little, you know, it looks very serious and very genuine.
We have to go to some unpleasant places, so thank God the playwright gave us like 10 seconds of being in a good place.
And that's all you get, basically.
Yeah.
All right, let's set it up. Let's find out about your characters. Your character, describe her.
Her name is Emily Hughes Kapoor, and she is a visual artist. She has recently been working with the Islamic tradition in her visual art. that she's doing. And so she's passionate about it, she's very earnest about it, and she's very optimistic and positive. And
But she's a nice, progressive, waspy girl.
she is. She's a nice, progressive, waspy girl who wants to help. She just wants to help. She wants to do the right thing. She wants justice for all the right people.
And the Kapoor in your last name is
his
his.
name.
So tell us about your character.
So Amir Kapoor is a corporate lawyer in mergers and acquisitions who has, I think sometime after 9/11, probably changed his name to Kapoor from Abdullah. He's of Pakistani origin, but he's decided that it would be easier for him to get along if he made his name sound more Indian and just avoided the conversation around religion at work. And among a lot of his associates, Shino is of a Muslim background, but he's also a self-declared apostate. So he also doesn't believe or practice or follow in the religion, and has a very complex relationship with it in terms of how he was raised and how he feels about it today.
The natural inclination will be to want to find out how much of these characters are actually you. So, in reality, you are an atheist?
I would say I'm definitely not Muslim. I was raised by my father's a Hindu, and but I think dabbled with.
Hang on, you're Hindu, Catholic.
Hindu, Catholic, and my dad was, I think, an atheist for part of his Hinduism.
Okay, and South Asian.
And South Asian,
So
and
there is-
Irish. Yeah.
And Irish too.
Yeah.
So there's some of you in this character.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the things I could really relate to in the Amir character was the complex relationship between being Indian or Pakistani. Now, my ancestors are from Sindh, which is now a province in Pakistan. But all of us who were of a Hindu background from Sindh, who during partition went to India, we're always identified as saying, oh yeah, we're from India. And people go, oh, where are you from? And then you go, Sindh. And then people go, well, that's in Pakistan.
That's Pakistan.
And so that was a part of his story that I could absolutely relate to, because that's in my own family story. How do you juggle with that? And then the other thing in Amir's story that I could really relate to for me was, which I didn't really experience until I was an actor and got into show business, was how much of your past, your cultural background, your last name, how much do you want that to define who you are or limit who you are? I didn't find that growing up in Canada, that being half South Asian and half Irish was really an obstacle. But I only found out I was an ethnic person when I met my first agent when I was a teenager.
Who wanted you to change your name?
Well, I did have an agent after I left the National Theatre School say, listen, if you don't want to get stuck playing these ethnic parts, which is I hear a concern of yours, you probably should change your name. And I had a real resistance to that. But there's days, I mean, here we are, we're talking hashtag Oscars So White 20 years into my career, and part of me wonders if it would have been a little different.
Now, you haven't got, well, I should ask you, how much of that nice, waspy, progressive girl is actually you?
Pretty much a lot of it is. A lot of it is. I feel like with Emily, the one thing I really have in common, the idea of the lack of consequences for your actions. So there are a lot of things that she does and doesn't realize that for someone else there would be ramifications to what a person says or does. And for her, she can kind of say whatever she wants and then, you know, blithely go away and it's all fine. So that's been, I mean, over the last few years, I think that's been something that's been talked about more and more, you know, the idea of white privilege and the idea that it's easy for someone like me to say or do what I want and then pretend it never happened and go away. So that's something I've been thinking about as a person. That's something even since 2012, like that idea has been permeating more and more.
In the conversation, yeah. What is, you know, I mean, the concept of white privilege can be kind of over-articulated, but I think Ayad explores it in a really interesting way here.
Yeah.
And that she thinks, well, she doesn't understand that for someone who's not white, there may be a greater consequence to doing certain things. Like Amir ends up representing or appears at a news conference with this controversial imam. Now, if she did it, it might not have the same consequence, but as soon as Amir does it, it ends up having a big effect on his life.
It's a story in the New York Times, and
Yeah,
that
there you
begets
go.
a whole bunch of stuff. You're not the only couple in the play, we should establish. There's another couple. She's black, he's Jewish. So you've got a great stew of different characters happening here. And everybody is delightfully progressive and not too religious, and on the surface, you know, gets along just swimmingly. And then we find out, oh my goodness, all of these issues of racism and Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and, you know, it's all there. And once it explodes, this play is frightening. How much, well, I mean, this is one of the key questions in the play, and I'd like you two to just sort of weigh in on it. How much of our backgrounds can we really escape? Gita, what do you think?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Someone asked me if I was in this kind of situation, if I'd be able to transcend this type of a conflict that happens. And my first reaction, my gut reaction is, of course I could. But maybe that's the problem with these characters. They all think the same thing. They think they're smart enough. They think they're open-minded enough. They think they're successful enough that these things don't matter. And so that's how they get themselves into this horrible situation. I still can't see how this could possibly happen to me. But
neither do these characters.
But neither do they.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a trap, I guess.
And I think, too, it's this idea that, which he explores in the play, that for all of our urban hipness and affluence, perhaps, that we have, and our social media connectiveness and all that, we still have very tribal roots when it comes down to it.
Can I say the line? I wrote this line down.
Right.
You say it's tribal. It's in the bones. I'm quoting you here, and you got to work hard to get that shit out.
Yeah.
That's the case, isn't it?
I think that's sort of a thesis statement of Ayad's in the play that he's written, that he really wants to explore what that is, because perhaps that might allow us to understand why some of these conversations are so complicated and so difficult. That we have such deep-rooted feelings about these things that we can't expect of each other that they can change like that, or that you can convince someone intellectually that they should have a different opinion, because it's how we were raised, how we core beliefs.
So we are just kidding ourselves if we think that our nice, progressive, Western mores can overcome what's bred in the bone. Is that right?
Or that it's not going to be easy. And that
easy.
when complicated things, I mean, unfortunately, Ayad's had this experience that when this play's opened so often in different cities and countries where there's been these big conflicts or attacks or terrible things happening. And I think he has it as a reminder that the conversations that need to happen to move forward are not going to be simple. And they're not going to be ones we can have in 2 minutes. You know, they're big.
But they are conversations that we have to have. So we have to listen to what both sides are saying.
Yeah, otherwise we're going to end up with the result that happens at the end of this play.
Yeah.
Which is, well, I'm not going to give away the ending, obviously, but yeah, it's pretty, it's not good. One of the characters in this play, your character in this play, is trying to figure out whether he's really more Muslim or more American. And again, outside the play for a second, as we look at society, do you think Muslims don't assimilate into North American society as well as other groups because they don't, or because we don't let them?
Well, I mean, we're a country of immigrants, right? I mean, the thing I find, one reason we wanted to do this play in Toronto in particular was that I'm sure that's a question someone could ask me on TV in 1960 about, you know, people who come from the Ukraine or people who come from Russia. And then generations before that, well, how are Jews going to really integrate into Canada if they don't let go of the hand, don't start going to church? And
Or
don't
a Catholic who wants to be president in 1960.
Yeah, or, you know, God forbid there'd ever be a Catholic mayor of Toronto even. You know, you can have High Park, but just promise me that we won't have a Catholic mayor. I mean, it's incredible to think that in our city, those were the conversations that were there. So for me, I think, you know, with the state of what's happening in the world right now, for sure, Muslims really have to face the big question. They're on the hot seat right now, for sure. And I think it's a very complicated conversation inside the Muslim community. And I think one thing that's important to realize, and Ayad speaks about this too, there's hardly a pluralistic reaction of the Muslim identity in our country, in our city, is so diverse and made up of so many points of view that I think when it comes to the play, you know, I had sometimes been challenged. Well, you know, what do Muslims think about your play that deals with these stereotypes and these complex things? But you know, we've stopped asking the question of like, well, what do Italian Americans think of Martin Scorsese? You know, we just kind of have accepted that if you're going to talk about a cultural group and a cultural issue and cultural issues, you're going to be wrestling with some of these big questions.
But I think, Gita, if you put this play on, and you have to be prepared for the, you know, the kickstarting of a big conversation that you are doing about all of these very uncomfortable, messy issues whether they're in Toronto or anywhere else in North America. Have you come to any conclusions about what you think about these things?
What I love about this play is that there are no easy answers. There are a lot of questions that are asked, and I think that's the majority of the battle is being courageous enough to ask the questions in the first place, honestly. I don't know. I mean, the characters, they have this wonderful ability to function with completely opposing ideas simultaneously. So, you know, he'll say one thing and then later on he'll say or do something completely different, and yet somehow it manages to be in the same character, which I think is also interesting for the audience, because you can be on someone's side and then all of a sudden the character will do something that's so abhorrent to you, and then you have to wrestle with, well, how does that make me feel, and what's right and what's wrong about what this person's done.
And I think also, you know, we're even trying to have these, at almost all the performances, there is this opportunity for Q&A with the audience where people can ask us, you know, the questions we often get as actors in Q&A, how do you remember all those lines, those kinds of things, but also gives people a chance to hear how other people in the audience feel about what they've just experienced. I mean, I definitely want you to leave the theater asking questions and talking to your wife or whoever you came to see the show with about what you agreed with, what you disagreed with, what you actually believe. What I admire so much about this play, and one of the traps of a play that would have these issues in it, is it becomes an issue play, where we're telling you, the audience, what you're supposed to feel and believe. And I think he somehow managed in this to really leave the audience going, what do I think? How do I feel?
I've never been to a play where I've heard the audience gasp as many times as they do in this play. And I want to bring up one of the gasp lines right now, and get comfortable, because this is going to take some setup here. There is one moment where your character is having to consider 9/11. And you're a proud American Wall Street predator, shark, M&A guy, but you're also trying to deal with these inner feelings of being a Muslim in America. And you confess at one point, your character, that there's a part of you that feels pride that 9/11 happened, that Muslims could somehow pull that off. How do you kind of negotiate all of those feelings of, on the one hand, horror, on the other hand, pride in this kind of thing?
I think for the Amir character, that is central to what is tearing him up inside. Because the line that follows when the rest of the dinner party is astounded to hear him say that, is he basically says, yeah, I forgot which we I was. And I think he really, in that moment, can't figure out how he's supposed to feel. Now, this has also come with great tumult and consequence in his own life, and several glasses of scotch that have really unhinged him. But I'll tell you, that was the most gripping moment in the theater when we saw it at the Lincoln Center in New York, when we were 10 or 11 years out from that attack, sitting in the Lincoln Center with the New York audience, watching them do this play, to be 100 blocks from ground zero and to hear that said out loud. I've never experienced anything like that in my life.
That was a gasp.
And being there in that moment.
All the oxygen was sucked out of the room.
Absolutely. And you know, it takes a lot of courage to put that down on a piece of paper for a character to say. And I think it helps build so much of the complexity that's in it. I mean, personally, I don't understand how anyone could celebrate something like that, but at the same time, I can understand when people feel like they're the little guy and they get the you know, the big guy gets a black eye. I understand that dynamic in humanity, but of course, you know, but what I love in the play is that he doesn't understand it either, but it's there, and he says it out loud. And I had told me a story about how he had a dinner party with his now ex-wife and friends, where the conversations around some of the issues in this play came up. And he described how that night, the relationships, after that night, the relationships with those people were never the same. And that was, in a sense, almost true life inspiration for this play. And that was very powerful to me, because it's connected to a real truth that I think people can relate to. You know, everyone's talked about religion, race, and politics at the dinner table at a friend's house. Probably when your mom has said from the day you were born, don't talk about those things, and they do come in with a consequence.
Just finally, please tell me, your real-life marriage is not anything like the marriage described in this play?
Nothing like it at all. We're
Okay.
very.
We're doing okay.
We're happy. We have a family. And,
Yeah, we got two beautiful
we've got
boys at home.
Two kids.
But we just love that. We're very grateful that we had the opportunity to tell the story together.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. And we should remind everybody, Disgraced is playing at the Panasonic Theatre in downtown Toronto until the 24th of April. And thanks for bringing it up to the Big Smoke from NYC. It's really very much worth seeing.
Thank you.
Raul Venetia, Birgitta Solom. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.